So welcome to Business Essentials and what this is going to look like for the next little while. So I'm recording this on my iPad while I'm talking to you guys on my phone. So that way, if any of you miss this or if there's any glitches along the way, I can post the link to you later about what we covered in class, so you can always access that if you would like. So my goal for the next 8 weeks is to meet with you one time a week. Meet with you like this in this type of a setting one time a week. So Zoom, this exact link that you came to today will be the same link that we use every single Monday at this exact same time. And my goal is just to meet with you for about 30 minutes. So from 9:15 to 9:45, and then at 9:45, that should be enough time to cover what we need to cover. And then I'm going to set you loose for the rest of the week to work on the 2 assignments that I posted into Schoology. So if you've not had a chance yet to look at Schoology, if you go into Schoology, you'll notice that there should be a folder that says week 1 on it with continuous learning plan or whatever, week 1. And in that folder, there's 2 assignments. Those 2 assignments, you have the entire week to complete. Okay, and they won't take you a terrible amount of time. Something that the state of Kansas and Prairie View High School has kind of encouraged us teachers to do is to give you approximately 30 minutes worth of work every day. So 30 minutes from Monday, 30 minutes Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, even though I'm only meeting with you on Mondays. So this is our 30 minutes for the day. Today is this meeting. And then on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, your 30 minutes is kind of split among those 2 assignments. So feel free to do them however you need to get them done. They are not going to take you an hour apiece. I'm just giving you that much time to make sure that you get them done and done well. Everything that we do during this time of online learning does count and does help your grades. So please make sure that you keep that in mind as you're thinking through your week and what you need to get done and things along those lines. I have set everything on Schoology to be due by Friday at 5 p.m. So this will be the same process, just for sake of consistency, every week. We'll meet Monday. You'll have your assignments. They're due Friday by 5 p.m. Throughout the week, if you have any questions or anything, in the emails that I've sent you, I have my Google Voice number that you can get a hold of me by. And I also have my email, and I'll check both of those regularly. So please get a hold of me in one of those 2 methods, and we can make it work. If there's a reason that we need to have a Zoom outside of this meeting and outside of those other contacts, we'll talk about that at the time. We're just going to try to be flexible and patient and full of lots of grace during this crazy time of continuous learning. So before I go on with a little Zoom overview and some quick rules for us to keep in mind and then get to our instruction for the day, does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask? And if you do, just unmute your mic and go ahead and start. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm going to assume nobody had any questions. If you do, you can definitely stick on at the end of the period, I guess at 9:45, and we can talk then. And if when I open this up, every time I open it up, I'm going to always open it up at 9. So if you have any questions prior to us getting started for the day, that's also another great time to ask. So just know that you have those options as well. And even though right now my kids are kind of out of my hair because my husband's watching them, there's a chance you could see one of them, so I'm just going to warn you of that. It may be a little crazy here for a while, but we'll see how things go. So first and foremost, Zoom. Zoom is a great tool. It's one that I've used a lot with my master's classes when I was going to college just last semester. And so one of the things I want you to keep in mind, and you've already figured that out, is the little microphone on there. If you have an X across it, it means you're muted. I can't hear you. And there's also the same thing kind of with your camera. If you have the little camera down there, if your camera does not have an X across it, it means I can see you. And if it does have an X across it, it means I'm seeing a black screen for you. So just keep that in mind. I like being able to at least see that you're on here, even if I don't see your face, that's okay. If you're like one of those people that doesn't like people seeing your face and you're just wanting to show your forehead or a side of your body, that's fine. As long as I can kind of tell you're there, that's cool. Let me see here. And then also the mic. Anytime you have a question, just make sure you unmute yourself, even if it's while I'm talking. If you have a question and you need to stop me, that's the only way I'm going to know. So it's just a good practice to get in. I wish I could see every single one of you the entire time on the screen, but I can only see so many of you at a time. So just keep that in mind. If you need to say something or need to pipe in, just unmute and start talking, and I'll pause and whatever we need to hear, we'll hear. So keep that in mind. I'm also, like I said, I'm recording these. So if you miss something during the time or something lags, I will post to you the YouTube link of this recording of just me teaching, so that way you'll have that option to go back and look at it if you need to. When we're doing this, try to do it in a well-lit area. Pay attention to what's behind you. If it's something that you don't want us to see, then sit somewhere else. And, make sure that you're ready to go on time so we can get started and end on time as well. You all did well this time, so we'll just assume that this is going to be something that we can do. Rules, real quickly. Respect, okay? This is a number one rule. Be respectful of me. You guys always do a really good job with this. I really don't see this being an issue at all. Be respectful of your peers. Be respectful of the moment. We want to try to utilize this time in the best, most efficient way possible. Be appropriate with your words and be appropriate with your appearance. Again, this is not really for you all. This is really mostly for my seniors, but they, just trying to cover all my bases. And then also be patient and be flexible. So if we can do those things, those are really the only rules that I have. So if you've been in Schoology, and if you haven't, I'm going to kind of go over how assignments look in there. In the week 1 folder, if you push down on that, you'll see 2 assignments for this class, and they're the first 2 assignments that you have for this week. The first one listed is your Chapter 4 questions and responses. This will look similar to what you've done for other chapters and their questions and responses, except for I've taken out the terms. Okay, you don't have to do the terms. There's just some questions that go along with our reading for the chapter. And then the second option on there, or the second thing for you to do on there, it's not an option, sorry, is the choice board option. So there's like 7 different choices that you get to choose from to do for that weekly assignment. And if you open up the assignment, you'll see a little picture that has all 7 options listed. And then below that, you'll see that where you would turn in each of those 7 options, whichever one you choose to do. So those are your 2 assignments for the week. So I have hand selected those, and that's what we do Friday by 5 p.m. Before I continue on, are there any questions about that? Okay, so I assume we've all got that part. So those are the 2 assignments for the week. So some of you might be wondering, without asking the question, how are we going to know what Chapter 4 says if we don't have a book at home? Well, 2 ways. 1, our class time, that's what our class time is going to be spent doing, me kind of reading to you the chapter and going over the important information. Number 2, in your email this morning, I sent you a email that has 2 links in it to section 4.1 and section 4.2's PowerPoint. So you can see those through a Google slide version at your convenience. You only need to access those if you need to, but I just went ahead and sent them to you just in case. So you have those 2 things that would have notes from the chapters, and then you'll have me reading the chapter to you that you'll also have access to via a YouTube link later today after I finish recording. So those are the ways that we're going to do this. I felt like that was more beneficial because you could pause it, rewind it, whatever if you needed to. And that way I didn't have to worry about sending books home with those whole coronavirus stuff and worrying about getting them back and all that fun stuff too. So this is kind of the option I've chosen to use. If you're just not for that at all and you really want to see the text, email me or text me and I will make sure that you get pictures of whatever pages and things like that that you need. All right. My goal here is to be as flexible and do what's best for you guys. And I felt so far that these things would work. So again, before I continue on, does anybody have any questions? All right. So we've gone over Zoom. We've gone over our rules. We've gone over kind of how I'm going to set up this class for the next several weeks. I think we're ready to start on Chapter 4. So I'm literally going to read to you from the textbook, this lovely textbook that you all remember from our classroom. I'm going to try to keep it interesting and ask questions along the way. So if I ask a question, please unmute your mic if you think you know the answer or are ready to respond, and go ahead and do that. And then we'll get through this, and when we're done, we're done. So this chapter is all about ethics, business ethics, and social responsibility, which honestly could not be more timely right now. So with the current pandemic that's going on and the reason we're all doing this continuous learning, a lot of businesses have taken it upon themselves to find ways to help. For instance, one is Zoom. This is not usually a free service to everybody, but right now, because of the time that we're having, Zoom's CEO has made it available to every teacher for free to use for instruction in the country, which is pretty cool. Other things that we've seen going on, Mary Kay, the cosmetic company, they are closing down some of their lines and their factory lines and using them to make antibacterial gel and stuff like that, so that people have antibacterial gel. And specifically those who are on the front lines, like those who are nurses and EMTs and things like that. So we're seeing companies who are saying, hey, there's a need out there globally. What can we do to help? So that's social responsibility right there. It's companies saying, hey, there's a need. Let's figure out a way for us to help with this need. And there's a lot of companies doing that right now. A lot of educational companies, a lot of companies that have the ability to make products that are needed right now, like ventilators and things along those lines. We're just seeing a lot of companies step up. That's called social responsibility. The other side of this chapter is ethics. And that is, basically doing the right thing when no one's watching. And sometimes it's legal issues, like doing actually what the law requires. But more often than not, it's the gray areas. It's the areas where, hey, there's these two options. Neither one's completely wrong, but what do I do? So that's what this whole chapter is about. And when it comes to businesses, the decisions and the choices that they make affect a lot of people. They affect their employers, they affect their customers, they affect themselves, their investors. And so these decisions that they make when they're ethical decisions are super important. So that's what we're talking about. So business ethics, the nature of ethics. Ethics are moral principles by which people conduct themselves personally, socially, or professionally. For example, you do not cheat on a test or lie to friends or your family because of your personal honor and integrity. So, we're going to see ethics not only in businesses, but that's primarily what we're going to talk about. We also see them in our own personal lives. So, not cheating on a test, we don't do that because it's wrong, right? It's wrong to cheat on a test. Now, there's some people who still choose to do it, and that would mean that they're not following ethical procedure. Okay, business ethics is like rules that are based on moral principles about how businesses, employees should conduct themselves. So like, for instance, you can think about if you have a job and you're supposed to be working from this time to this time, but you're texting on your phone to your friends during that time. Are you being responsible to the business for how you're using your time? Is that an ethical thing? Are you looking up things that are related to what you're supposed to be doing when you're at school, or are you looking up personal videos and watching those when you're supposed to be working on assignments? Those kinds of questions would be ethical questions to ask yourself. The effects of unethical behavior by customers are not always obvious. However, to make up for problems caused by unethical behavior, businesses have to charge more for their products, and as a result, customers have to pay more. So when you think about businesses and customers, some things that we commonly see is, maybe a customer removes a price tag from one item and puts it on another item because it makes it cheaper. Now, personally, that's against the law, but that's also where businesses see unethical behavior, or people maybe using coupons a little beyond what they're actually supposed to be used for, their intentions. These types of choices based from customers make businesses have to charge more for their products. They make them have to, charge other customers more because of one decision made by another customer. And so sometimes the effects grow. Different cultures, businesses, and industries have different ethical standards. So, some of the standards that we talk about are primarily going to be considered in the United States, but there might be different standards in different countries. For instance, in some countries, removing your shoes when you enter the business place is common. That might seem crazy to the Americans, but in other countries, that's extremely common. When you go out to dinner for a business meeting, if you choose not to eat the food, in the United States, we might just think, maybe they just don't like it. But in other cultures, that could be offensive if you don't try the food. So just thinking about those things and the ethical concerns that might change from country to country and context to context. Some cultures, including in the United States, believe that excessive gift giving is considered bribery, which is unethical. Bribery occurs when gifts, money, or favors are offered to encourage a business deal. In other countries, excessive gift giving is overlooked and considered ethical. So just different changes. So how does the law play a role? Ethics involves a system of moral principles that govern appropriate conduct for a person or a group. The law involves rules for conduct that may be used to punish violators. So in businesses, people follow rules as well as a code of ethics. And the code of ethics is basically a set of guidelines that's used to help businesses know how their employees should act. At school, you guys have a student handbook. That's basically your code of ethics. That's what teaches you how you should act while you're at school and what consequences are going to come from different behaviors. There are some organizations in the United States that help out with this. One example would be OSHA, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. That's one of those government forces that's a division of the U.S. Department of Labor, and they go into different establishments and make sure that they're treating their people that work for them, their employees, fairly, and that they're giving them safe environments to work in. So, for instance, right now with this pandemic going on, there's a lot of businesses that still have people working. So they have to go in and they have to make sure that if they're still working, that they have all the proper things that they need to do so safely, like gloves, a face mask, special protection, plenty of hand sanitizer, different things that are spread out far enough so their workers aren't coming in within that 6 feet distance that everybody has to stay separated, all these different things. And OSHA is one of the organizations that kind of comes in and says, hey, are businesses doing what they need to do to keep their employees safe? And that's an ethical issue for a lot of businesses. So most businesses police themselves, but some have special forces that have to come in and do that. Unethical business practices include lying, offering merchandise known to be substandard, or treating customers and employees unfairly. So on the flip side of this, there is unethical behavior that does take place in businesses. There's also something that we call a conflict of interest. And so anytime there's some self-interest that can be done in a situation. So if a business makes a decision to do something and it only benefits the owner, that would be considered a conflict of interest. Or if it could benefit the owner and that's the reason that they choose to do it, then that's considered a conflict of interest. They have to make sure that the decisions that they're making are not just to their own benefit, but also to the benefit of the greatest good. So some questions that help us to deal with ethical situations when we encounter them. The first one is it against the law? Does it violate company or professional policies? So that's the first question. Is it against the law? Question number 2, even if everyone is doing it, how would I feel if someone did this to me? So anytime you encounter a situation, those are the first 2 questions to ask. Is it against the law? And if this was done to me, how would I feel? And then the last one is, am I sacrificing long-term benefits for short-term gains? Sometimes we do something because in the moment it makes sense, but down the road it hurts us. So those 3 questions. Is it against the law? If it was done to me, how would I feel? And then, is it going to be good in the long term as well as in the short term? So thinking through those 3 things is extremely important when it comes to ethical questions. And then there's a little bit of a process to go through when it comes to ethical decision making. Step 1, identify what the problem is. What is the ethical dilemma at hand? Maybe the ethical dilemma is I didn't do my homework. So what are some of the alternatives? I could copy off of my friends and turn it in, or I could take the 0. Those are my options. So the first one, identify the problem. What are my possible actions is number 2. Number 3, who could be affected? Well, you could be affected because you're not learning the material. Your friend could be affected because they're the ones letting you use their paper. Or your teacher could be affected because now she doesn't know what you do or don't know properly, and you're lying to her is basically what it is. So those are the people that could be affected by this situation. Potentially your parents could be affected if you get a detention and you have to stay after school, and now they have to alter their schedule to come and get you, something along those lines. So, what are the possible effects is number 3. Who could be affected? Number 4, what are the possible effects of the different options? So if I do cheat versus if I don't cheat, what are the possible outcomes? And then number 5 is select the actual best option. So those are some of the steps of the ethical decision-making process. So that's the first part of chapter 4. Before I move into social responsibility, and I know I went through that quickly, are there any questions? Okay. Social responsibility. Okay. This is the duty to do what is best for the good of society. And I think this is the one that we're going to see a lot right now. So I encourage you, as you're going about your week, if you're watching the news or if you're scrolling through social media, pay attention for these social responsibility moments. Social responsibility, again, is the duty to do what is best for the good of society. So this looks like a responsibility to customers, a responsibility to employees, a responsibility to employees, a responsibility to society, and then a responsibility to investors or owners and creditors. So there's 4 areas of responsibility. Again, that's to customers, employees, society, and creditors or owners. And this chapter just breaks it down. So responsibilities to customers basically looks like making sure that the products and the services that you're offering are safe for customers. So think about the Food and Drug Administration, how they make sure that the products that are put on shelves are safe for consumers. They make sure that the companies obey government rules. Some companies do not act responsibly, and as a result, they have to come in and either close them down or fine them or whatever is necessary to make sure that they comply with the regulations. When companies have competition, this also usually helps. So if companies are competing against other companies that can do the same, usually they choose to act more responsibly because that's what customers are going to choose. So when companies don't have as much competition, customers can be affected and might get less high quality. Responsibility to employees, that means giving them a safe work experience, providing ways for them to volunteer and do things beyond what is required of them. Also giving them, paid time off, vacation, things like that. These are all things are ways that companies can be responsible to their employees. They can give them equal treatment and equal pay. In fact, this is actually a requirement due to the Equal Pay Act that was passed in 1964. And then there's also the Americans with Disabilities Act. So if there's ever an employee who has some form of a disability, if it's something that can be easily taken care of or, accommodated fairly reasonably, then companies are required to do that. And that's according to the Americans with Disabilities Act. Then there's also the responsibility to society. So businesses have responsibilities not only to customers and employees, but also to society. One of the biggest social issues that is facing businesses today is environmental responsibility. So think about all the companies that are going green. We've heard a lot about straws lately and how, not to use plastic straws and not to use plastic bags and to go to reusable items like that, recycling and things along those lines. Those are all part of social responsibility to society. And a lot of businesses consider that. And another governmental agency that helps there is the Environmental Protection Agency, also known as the EPA. And they help to enforce and protect the environment. And then the last area here is the responsibility to creditors and owners. Basically, the creditors and owners are the people that give you the money to start your business and keep it going. So being responsible to them and treating them well is an important aspect for businesses. In the late 1990s and in the early part of the 21st century, a number of major corporations reportedly kept inaccurate accounting standards. They were making their numbers look better than they actually were. And this became a big issue for creditors because people were buying into and helping companies without having proper records of their financial status. So one of the responsibilities to creditors and owners is reporting things accurately, making sure you're doing that. And there was another act that was passed to help with that, and that's the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which makes it an illegal issue to report financial and accounting information inaccurately. So that is section 4.2. That's all about social responsibility. So this week in your assignments, the first one is just answering questions in response into what I just went over, as well as you can look at the PowerPoints if you'd like to that I sent you in your email. And then you also have a choice board option, which has a lot of fun options available to you, all of which are kind of helping us apply our knowledge outside of just the text. So before I end here, are there any questions, concerns, anything that I need to go over from what I've already covered? Okay, give me a thumbs up just so I know you're alive still. All right, guys. I'm going to stick on here just in case anybody has questions that they were afraid or just not wanting to ask to the group as a whole. Otherwise, if you feel like you're good to go and you don't need any extra help from me as far as knowing what you need to do for the week or any extra information, then go ahead and hit the leave button, and I will see you here next Monday, same time, same place.